Coming up on this edition of Safari ChangeMakers.
And you see it happening with guests when they're staying with us, the very intimate exposure that they get with this amazing people that, we are surrounded by, and they really start to process what they're seeing and what is going on. And it does just make you realize that possibly what we find so important really actually isn't.
This is Safari ChangeMakers. Conversations with Africa's most innovative visionaries, the guardians, pioneers, and trailblazers, offering solutions to the most pressing challenges facing the continent. Over-tourism, human-wildlife conflict, the climate crisis, and environmental degradation. Conversations that reveal bold strategies for sustainable tourism leading to economic opportunities for indigenous communities while protecting local ecosystems and wildlife. Here's your host, founder of Artisans of Safari, recognized by Travel and Leisure and Condé Nast Traveler magazines as one of the top travel specialists for Africa, Karin Jones.
I want you to meet Rob and Storm Mason. They are the dynamic husband and wife team who've spent decades running some of East Africa's most iconic safari camps. And then they finally decided to build one of their own. Rob is a world-class guide with stories that could fill a library, and together they've turned a lifetime of experience into something deeply personal. When they first shared their dream with the Samburu elders, the response was unexpected. Make it a 60-room hotel. What followed is a story of patience, courage, and conservation. Proof that sometimes the boldest idea is to do things smaller, slower, and from the heart.
Hi, Karin. Thank you for having us. We are a good hour-and-a-half flight north of Nairobi, 10 and a half hours drive. It's really sort of delving deep into wilderness, and we'll actually just give a sneak peek at the wilderness. So we're set in a valley in the heart of a county called Samburu County, which is home to the Samburu people, and it's a pretty undeveloped county within Kenya. Not a massive population of people, about 300,000 people, and they all live a pretty rural pastoralist life. But the advantage of that is that there's a lot of untouched wilderness, which was really enticing to us.
Was that a dog I saw laying on the lawn behind you?
That was a dog.
It was.
Yeah.
You spotted the lesser spotted sausage dog. That's little Badger, who actually is, she's become quite a mascot for the camp, and generally tends to be one of the highlights of a guest's time here with us. She's the sweetest thing. And actually at my feet, what you can't see is another little creature. Her name is Skunk, and she is not too sure what she is. She's a mixture of I don't know. She looks a little bit feral, but she's extraordinarily sweet, and it really is our home, I suppose. And our son, unfortunately, isn't around right now. He's actually joined some guests who are in camp with us at the moment, and they've gone to spend a couple of hours with some warriors in the riverbed playing the warrior games. Guests who are adventurous enough and who are prepared to do what is quite a long trip to actually get to us have the opportunity to come and spend some time with us and come and learn the very, very special and very amazing things that we are actually busy working on here.
How old is your son?
Gosh, I wish I could stop time. He's just turned 9. And we have the luxury of actually having him with us at the moment. It's the end of the school year. And so we've had him with us for the last 6 weeks. So he really is such an incredible little character. And he's such a wealth of information. And, he's been a part of the story with us since he was running around in, diapers, when we were still recceing the site. And he was still learning to walk, and he's just grown up in this incredible space. And so certainly for the two of us, contributes enormously to to really everything that we're doing here. And I think what's amazing about him, Karin, is that he has grown up here and he's learnt so much here. And I think the greatest thing that we've been able to teach him is empathy, I suppose, is a good word. And as a result of that, we can only hope that the ultimate vision and mission that is Kalepo can be hopefully carried forward by him as well one day.
How many years have you been running what you're doing now here at Kalepo?
We started, as Storm said, when Angus was still in diapers.
And he's really embraced these incredible people. And for many, many, many years, he was adamant that, please, Mama, don't put sun cream on me because I actually want to be black. He gets to, have this amazing home with, in 460,000 acres of pure wilderness where he is, surrounded by 60 Samburu staff members who adore him. And so it really is this incredible kind of brotherhood, I suppose. And then he gets to go to school where he does very, very well, and he does normal stuff, and he's surrounded by a group of amazing little friends. Anyway, I feel like we're just talking about our son.
That's it. Can you tell me a little bit about the Samburu in the area, the history of the people and the wildlife, and sort of how things have evolved?
The Samburu people are Nilotic people. Their ancestry is Nilotic, which basically means they originated in the Nile Basin, which is currently South Sudan, modern day South Sudan. And there were wave after wave of people that migrated south following the Rift Valley looking for pasture. All of those people are pastoralist, which means they depend on their livestock for a living. So herding cattle and goats, they all started moving south as droughts would hit them, or periodic kind of seasonal migrations moving south. And the Maasai are the best known of the Nilotic people, and they are the southernmost Nilotic people. They settled in what is southern Kenya or northern Tanzania. The Maasai Mara and the Serengeti ecosystem is where one finds Maasai people. As recently as about 250 years ago, the Samburu people settled in this part of the world. And it's a lot more marginal than the Masai Mara. And for people who depend on grass to keep their livestock alive, I think they had a far harder time. It is a semi-arid part of the country, so it has 2 rain seasons, as does the rest of East Africa. So April, May, we have a bit of rain, and then November also rains. But other than that, it's pretty dry, which is wonderful from a tourism perspective, because we have very reliable, good weather in those other 10 months. But it's a hard place to live. During those dry months, there's no standing water. They end up having to dig wells to keep their animals alive. So they basically settled in this part of the world and lived side by side with wildlife. Not always on the best of terms. Predators would eat their livestock. Elephants would chase their cattle from water holes. And also, to compound that, they also settled here at the beginning of a big wave of ivory hunting. So northern Kenya was very well known for great elephant hunting, and was a real sort of bastion of elephant hunting. So they often were involved in it. But to be honest, actually, a lot of organized gangs of elephant hunters worked this area where our camp currently is. And it's quite a unique part of the country, because it's basically got this spine of pretty high mountains, 2,450 meters above sea level, rising out of a pretty flat, dry country of about 800 meters above sea level. So quite a big variance in altitude. Yeah. But what made this spine of mountains so appealing to people and wildlife is that because you have this diversity of vegetation and altitude, you actually have kind of a cloud forest at the top of the mountains, which feeds the lowlands below. where our camp is actually in a drier part of the conservancy. It's at that low altitude. We have these seasonal streams which flow when it rains, but then they dry up completely when it's not raining. But you can dig in the dry rivers and find water. So that obviously kept people and elephants and everyone going. So they had this interesting history with wildlife where elephants were, to a large extent, a resource that they utilized to make a living by hunting them. And many of the rangers that we have in the conservancy now are old poaching hunters, and that's so they remember their youth tracking elephants and killing them for ivory. This area was also home to black rhino until as recently as 1996, when the last black rhino was poached in this valley. So unfortunately, black rhinos are extinct in this part of the world, but everything else still occurs here. So lion, leopard, elephant, cheetah,
Grevy's zebra.
Lots of hyena, Grevy's zebra, because they believe God bestowed cattle on them as their source of food and their livelihood and their measure of wealth. They basically focus all their energies on looking after their livestock. And it's one of the reasons why a lot of northern Kenya still has pretty good populations of wildlife, because the Nilotic people don't believe in eating wildlife. So that kind of brings us up to this point in time, where Storm and I had been working in the industry for 15 years and wanted to do our own thing, and kind of scratched our head a lot and had many a chat about which direction we would go. And being South African originally, South Africa was on the cards. We had worked in Zambia and Tanzania and India, as well as Kenya. We basically had already fallen in love with the people of Kenya, but it was, then we kind of had to pose ourselves the question, can we make a living out of this country? And are there still opportunities? And I think the opportunities are what really excited us. We could have gone and built a camp in the Masai Mara, and without disrespecting the Masai Mara, it's an ecosystem that is already protected, and if not oversubscribed. And if we could invest our life savings and life energy into a place where we could really make a difference, I think it was far more appealing to us. And that's why we chose Kalepo.
How did you initially make inroads or discussions with the local people in the area, and is the land their land? How does that all work?
Kalepo is it's an NRT member conservancy. NRT is Northern Rangelands Trust, and basically it's an NGO that helps communities establish conservancies on community land. So there are a series of group ranches which are home to clans and tribes within northern Kenya, and effectively this was always a group ranch, and it was it's a big tract of land, 460,000 acres, 180,000 hectares, and Northern Rangelands Trust basically gave the people of this land the tools to create a conservancy if they wanted to do that. It's a membership organization, so that the communities approach NRT to become members. And once they do that, they basically get support on creating a form of governance amongst the elders, and the tools that they need and finance they need to build a headquarters, start employing people to basically help create structures of governance and conservation. At the end of the day, conservation is a huge goal that we're all working towards. So Northern Rangelands Trust was the bridge between the community and us. That's Angus coming back now.
Hi, Angus. Hi there. How are you?
Hey, buddy.
Yeah. Go
Hi.
Spring.
Hi. How are you?
Good, thanks. And you?
The guests have a good time?
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
She's not so keen to chat. We've just actually received now 3-week-old tiny kittens. They were found on the side of the highway.
He wants to get back to the kitties.
He wants to go and get.
Are the guests getting to see the kitties too?
They are, and so we actually only have we have a husband and wife who are with us at the moment, from Georgia, and they are here with us for 3 nights. It's their first time on safari. They both are retired. They retired just before COVID, and they have longed to come to Africa, and they finally have made it, and they've had an incredible trip so far. We're sort of in the middle of their trip. They've been with us now for 3 nights. They leave tomorrow. So it's they have literally just immersed themselves in the last 3 days into kind of everything that we do here. And we had lunch with them today, and it was very moving actually. They've had a really very, very special time.
It's a 2-week safari,
Yeah.
and the majority of it is conventional safari, so wildlife related. As you know, you spend 10 days in a game viewer enjoying Africa's wildlife. It's an incredible experience, but it's
quite nice to do something else.
to have a bit of diversity thrown in the mix and to break it up a little. And they were also pretty clear that they wanted to immerse themselves in a culture and understand how Kenyan people live. And I think sometimes you can actually just move in a safari, like a safari cocoon, really, from one property to another, and you're just kind of in this luxury bubble. You get onto a chartered plane or a scheduled flight into paradise and fly to another paradise, and and I think we believe we found our paradise, which is actually a living ecosystem where people live in this ecosystem the way they have for hundreds of years, and you can immerse yourself in that culture as much or as little as you want, and I think that's incredibly rewarding.
She has also actually studied she studied anthropology, and so she's extraordinarily fascinated to learn the culture. But we actually had brunch with them yesterday, and and we got into some pretty sort of deep and meaningful conversations, because they had just come back from the village, which is a visit to a Samburu homestead, and it's an incredibly humbling experience. Let me just say that it's an incredibly humbling experience, and they actually didn't know what they were going into, and so they got back from the village, and then we had brunch with them, and she just said that she's spent years studying people and reading books, and nothing in a book can prepare you, or nothing in a book can actually tell you what it is that you're going to see when you really have that true, genuine, uncontrived experience to actually go into somebody's home.
I think in the West we've become such a melting pot of cultures and religions and beliefs that we're pretty homogenous, really.
Yeah.
We all kind of believe in the same rights and wrongs, and we have the same hairstyles, we dress the same way, we all kind of look the same and sound the same and are the same. And I think it's really refreshing to actually meet a group of people who believe in their traditions and live by them,
and who are so true to them.
And you can actually go and experience that.
Yeah.
And nothing. Our relationship with the community is very much a partnership where they're not putting on a show at all. We have brought an economy to their landscape. A lot of their sons work in our camp, and we have the opportunity to then take our guests to go and actually see a working home, and go and meet our waiter's mum, and have a cup of tea with her, and understand daily life, which is pretty unique.
What is the difference between what you're doing and the way that a lot of tourists sort of go in and just quickly move through a cultural interaction?
All of Africa's main wildlife destinations are preserved for wildlife only, and people live outside of the reserves.
It's all fenced off.
And sometimes they're not fenced, but there's still a river that's a boundary or something like that. And people don't live in the ecosystem. And here you actually get to step into something which is actually the total opposite. It's number one, home to the Samburu people. And there are 8,000 people that live in 460,000 acres. And obviously they don't all live a rural life. There are some little villages and settlements which have schools and clinics, and they're functioning villages.
Yeah.
But between that area is a lot of wilderness, and there are people that herd their cattle and goats into that wilderness as they have for hundreds of years. And the idea is never to change that. I think that it's a community, it's a conservation model that has real legs, because let's face it, there's going to be more and more pressure on all of those exclusionary places in the future. As the human population increases, those places are going to come under more pressure. So I think to have an ecosystem where you've got people living in it already and actually value the elephant that they're herding their cattle next to is one that can really work and carry us through for decades.
Where's the community? How close are they?
So the nearest homestead is about 4 kilometers from us.
Okay.
The people here are nomadic.
Okay.
Traditionally, their lifestyle would have been entirely nomadic. They would have followed seasonal rains in the greater ecosystem and moved around, a few hundred kilometers at a time with their cattle and their family. And their family would have been, all their life possessions would have been loaded up onto donkeys. They would have herded their cattle and goats. And to a large extent, a lot of them still do that, but in a much smaller range. And that's just a product of the fact that if they keep walking, beyond 2 hours to our east, they'll start getting to a road that connects Kenya to Ethiopia. And, times are changing, and there is development and population pressure. And as a result, we've got people that live entirely in this ecosystem. But having said that, though, we're fortunate in that we have this mountain range, which creates 2 vegetation zones and climates. So we kind of have a community that utilizes the mountains as they have for hundreds of years in the dry times, and then they come back down to the plains in the wet time. There's no brick and mortar house.
Okay.
It's a very basic Samburu style hut, which involves mostly wooden materials covered with goat skins and cattle skins, and they live in there the way they've lived in there. They have a very distinct building style, and I think that's one thing that's kind of always blown us away, is that we had no idea what we were really letting ourselves into when we embarked on this journey. We just thought, well, that's kind of what a Samburu house looks like. They all look the same, and they kind of do all look the same. But the more you get to understand the culture, there is a type of home that a newly married woman has to occupy, and then a type of home that a married woman occupies, and a type of home that an elder woman occupies. Always one of the big take homes for guests when they go to the villages. We call them villages. It's more of a homestead, really. But basically, you get to experience this way of life, and it kind of makes all of our trivia in the West seem totally trivial.
So it's extraordinarily simple here, and it does just and you see it happening with guests when they're staying with us, and the exposure that the very intimate exposure that they get with this amazing people that we are surrounded by, and they really start to process what they're seeing and what is going on. And it does just make you realize that possibly what we find so important really actually isn't. It's not to take anything away from our lives or our guests' lives. It just does give you a little bit of perspective. And I know I do keep using the word humbling, because I do find myself saying that so often, but I think it's point and case for the two of us who get to live this and do this every day, and we get to go to the villages or the homesteads rather on a very regular basis for a number of reasons, whether there's the birth of a baby or a betrothal or a marriage or whatever it may be. We're invited into our staff's homes on a regular basis, and as a result, out of respect, we will always go. And it is always incredibly, and I said to Rob every single time we go, and we get in the car and we drive back to camp, and I just am reminded of how privileged we are to be able to have this incredible moment in time, because ultimately that is really what it is, Karin. There's a very small window in time left where and I do think, as a result of what we're doing, in that we're showing value in their culture, that as a result they are certainly going to be true to their culture for that much longer. But ultimately the price of progress in the world means it is going to change, and so there's this amazing window whereby you can actually step into yesteryear, and it is a little bit like going back in time. And I think over the last five years, which is a very short time, of what we've seen and the occasions we've attended and the ceremonies we've been privy to, and all of these amazing moments, that you almost feel like an outsider, because it's that raw, it's that. And
what will make the culture endure is that it is rooted in belief, and a very deep-seated belief. And I think we had no idea of that when we moved here, is that they truly believe that you cannot transition into manhood without being circumcised. And it's not something that is up for debate. It is a fact. And as a result, every young boy builds up to this period in his life where he knows he's going to be circumcised. And it's a major rite of passage. But a lot of their culture revolves around these incredible hurdles in their life, which are, an absolute privilege to kind of be part of.
Yeah.
And, I think the thing that we try and do is we try and be the bridge to the community for our guests in many ways. You can see our camp we spend a lot of time and energy in trying to make it beautiful. And we have a lot of Western trappings, because we are Western, and we like a pillow rather than a little wooden, we like a feather pillow rather than a little wooden pillow. And
Me too.
we also we also are able to open a world to our guests of this incredible culture, and we can also use our position to be guided by a lot of our community, that this is something that we'd love to invite guests to, or this is a very sacred day, we can't expose this to tourists. And obviously we respect that, but it's pretty incredible that still exists in this day and age. And we get to experience it.
To really get a sense, or have an opportunity to maybe experience just a tiny bit of what the two of you do by living there with Angus, what's the minimum amount of time to be there?
2 full days, in our opinion, is really what you would need to be able to do it all, without it being at a breakneck pace, but at the same time actually allowing yourself that little bit of extra time that you may want. For example, if I look at the guests this morning that went to the village, often what happens on a 2-night stay is, because there's so much that you need to fit in, guests sort of feel, okay, I need to go. And so a village could maybe be 2 hours. This morning they were gone for nearly 4 hours, and we chatted with them, and it was because they felt they had the luxury of being able to actually take it in, because they didn't have another commitment that they needed to get to, because they were going to miss out if they didn't do that. So comfortably 3 nights.
There's also a huge amount of freedom, so we're not governed by time constraints or anything. If we so as you've noticed during our call now, it's got dark. But if the guests were driving back from the Warrior Games and they found a hyena on the way back, there's nothing stopping them from actually just slowly following the hyena and maybe watching a hunt,
There's no dinner call.
Yeah.
The dinner is on your itinerary, and it's on your clock. If you go to the village, or to the homes, because it's always one of our staff members' homes, the only thing that we will ask our guests, obviously very politely, is please do not be late. If we're saying that we're going to be leaving at 6:30, we are really asking you to be respectful of that and to not to be late, because if you're late, our directive to the community is that you do not wait. So basically, what is going to happen in that home that morning is going to happen whether you are there or not.
Because I think the moment they start waiting,
the moment you start waiting, it becomes a show.
Exactly. Here comes the tourist. Let's start now.
Exactly. And that balance is very important to us, especially on a level whereby our cultural experiences really are very, very, very genuine.
No, but I think gone are the days where people just kind of assume they can just walk up to someone and take a picture. I think everyone's pretty respectful of that nowadays.
Yeah.
People are also, concerned about cultural misrepresentation or appropriation and things like that.
Yeah.
And, I think that's where, when I said earlier that Storm and I are the bridge between our guests and their world and our world and the Samburu world, I think that's pretty important. I think a lot of what we do is actually kind of gently warn guests about what they might experience. We also have really wonderful young guides who are both in their early 20s. We just have 2 guides at the moment, and they basically accompany all of our guests on all of their experiences. But they're young, charming Samburu gentlemen, and they really are gentlemen. They have a very keen kind of appreciation of what might come across as a little shocking and what might not, and that's been cultivated over a few years of us interacting with guests with them. And then I think very importantly, we also spend a lot of time with guests. We often, I would say, 70% of the time we actually dine with guests. And it's also a great opportunity to kind of touch on some of the interesting or poignant moments that people might have experienced that day, and actually, they're going to be some things that are going to have been a little upsetting. It's not everyone's cup of tea to see an animal shot in the jugular with a bow and arrow to harvest blood, but blood is a part of Samburu diet. And I think once you've discussed it and people understand that actually it's an incredible way of utilizing a source of protein, because the animal doesn't die, and actually they just pinch the little wound closed, and the animal walks off to feed another day. And it's pretty incredible that man actually could utilize a source of protein without killing the animal. And Samburus love their cattle dearly, so I think but a lot of people don't see that, and they get totally freaked out that they are seeing blood squirting out of an animal's neck and then being processed and drunk raw. It's life. It kind of makes sense when you disseminate it.
What we have certainly found in terms of feedback from our guests who are doing these experiences is that sometimes it can almost put you beyond your comfort zone. We do make sure that we get a lot of all the information about the guests that we can possibly have, whether they're vegan, whether they're claustrophobic, or a person who is vegan who may get extremely insulted by the fact that now they're bleeding a cow. So we certainly are very respectful of those things. But to be honest with you, if a guest asks us, yes, I'm vegan, or yes, I'm claustrophobic, should I do it? Our answer is always, hell yes.
Yeah.
You should, because it is the real thing. It's how people are living. Yeah. It's day-to-day life, and you are getting to see it. And yeah, I just think that's, I think it's remarkable.
You're going to see a conservancy that is really, a community working hard daily with two crazy
People.
that came and settled here with them, 2.5 with Angus.
Yeah.
And but you're going to see community conservation in action. And I think that's incredibly compelling. And I think it just, once you've connected with the people and the landscape and their way of life, when you sit and have a gin and tonic at the pool and 5 elephant bulls come down to drink, it just makes that interaction with those elephants so much more rewarding.
Powerful. Yeah.
Because those elephants have basically been feeding side by side with herdsmen for the whole day. And, the herdsmen are pretty good at throwing spears, and they could easily have just charged a spear at an elephant. But the fact that there's a conscious decision, and I suppose we're a community. I speak of the community as in the community and us as part of a community who are all aspiring to some pretty great things. And I think community conservation is the goal, and we are protecting this little corner of the world and empowering people to conserve it themselves. And the tangible effort is incredible since we've been.
More Safari Changemakers after this.
Safari ChangeMakers is brought to you by Artisans of Safari. Beyond the map lies adventure. With nearly 40 years guiding travelers into Africa's hidden sanctuaries, we craft journeys as individual as your fingerprint. Expertly designed, deeply personal. Connect with Karin at artisansofsafari.com for your collaborative consultation. Your safari, your story. Artisans of Safari.
When you started this, when you came in, did you sit down with the local community and come up with goals or the way that you were going to achieve this?
It took a lot of collaborating with the elders. There's a board of elders, and basically sometimes the two of us, but invariably myself, would come and sit with the elders, and we'd talk about all the points that it would take to come and build a camp on land, which is their land. So we didn't buy any of the land from them. The land is community land. We have a 30-year operating lease. So everything we've built here is handed over to the community after 30 years.
Okay.
And in that 30 years, we hope we can build a company and build a brand and build a long-term legacy for this corner of Africa.
Yeah.
But obviously, there are lots of discussion points that go into that. The obvious first ones were where people are living and avoiding those areas where there are settlements, avoiding places that are kind of designated for future town development and things like that. 20 kilometers to the east of us is a town called Ndonyo-Wasen, and it's home to about 3,500 people of the 8,000 people. So almost half the population lives in this little town. And there's already a school and a clinic, and it's quite a developed little town. And it would have not made sense at all to build a camp which was going to have wildlife as an element to next to
this town. Yeah.
So that influenced it, and then many other things, water sources, how the people utilize those water sources, grazing plans, and the grazing plans affect us on a seasonal basis. So right now, actually, we're transitioning from dry season into wet season. We're expecting rain in October, November. And at this time, people start to move up towards the valley beyond our camp and settle there to actually graze that area, so that when it rains, it flushes fresh, new grass.
Yep.
Those are maybe trivial kind of examples, but the people living in the landscape were the paramount influence to where the camp was built and how it was developed. I think the community was so hungry for any kind of economy. I think they wished that I had have been a millionaire that wanted to come and put up a 60-room Four Seasons style hotel, that would have been their first prize, because they equated bums and beds to equals lots of dollars.
Okay.
So it took us actually convincing them that attracting a high net worth individual to a small, tasteful luxury property with experience was paramount, was in the long run way more beneficial to the landscape, to them, less intrusive on their resources, and I think
because they maybe couldn't envision that a 60 rooms would mean many vehicles and trompsing around the land and
scheduled flights, and
right.
given less room to move in terms of grazing their livestock. They didn't look at the longer vision. It took a long time. These things, these community efforts and agreements take a very long time. And so, it sounds like we may have wasted time. Quite the contrary. It was imperative to lay the foundation for them to understand what the bigger mission and the bigger vision is, in that, right now we're Kalepo Camp, but I mean, ultimately we are striving to be the Kalepo Conservancy, where people and wildlife successfully and peacefully live side by side harmoniously. And that is ultimately what we are aspiring to, and that is ultimately what we're educating this community towards, is that they are the custodians of this incredible natural resource, and we're all responsible for protecting that natural resource.
And I think the camp is a cog in that wheel.
And it's a contrast to, for example, Four Seasons in the Serengeti with 75 rooms. And so by going with a high net cost per person and a smaller lodge,
I just tried to highlight examples like what has been done successfully in Botswana,
right?
And try and sort of use practical examples. And I had to try and paint the picture for them. Quite often, it was a real eye opener to them. I would show them a picture of what I envisaged our guest tent to look like, and they were like, "A tent? You're going to get a high net worth person to come and stay in a tent? Why would they want to do that? With brick and mortar and glass windows and stuff like that." So I think it's also, that's what's also been a wonderful journey, is that we employ a lot of people from the community. That's, I think, always been one of the biggest drivers in the camp for the community. I mean, employment is key. So we're in this together, and it's all part of it. But to see their appreciation of the guest experience, I think is incredible, because I think they now get it. They now get that actually it's if you're sitting on the beach, so we call our dry riverbed the beach, because it is like a beach. But if you're sitting on the beach barefoot, playing with a pebble with your toes, with a damn good gin and tonic out of a beautiful glass, and it's a high quality gin and tonic, there's value in that, and it doesn't need the fancy hotel like room. So I think it's been quite a journey for them.
There's value to be far away from a lot of other people, and to have like a little tiny slice of Africa to yourself.
Totally. Exactly. And I think that is one of our USPs, is that our guests are the only guests in 460,000 acres. And it's really huge. Tangible when you land here. You come into this little airstrip, which we extended when we came here. It used to just be a conservation airstrip, and we kind of doubled it and made it able to take decent planes. But you land at this airstrip in the middle of nowhere, and there's absolutely nothing there except a windsock. And we're there to meet our guests, and you take this little drive to the camp, 20-minute drive, and it's just everyone gets here and they go, "Wow, okay, we kind of get it now. We can see where we are." because I think it's quite often the only place on a guest safari nowadays where they feel they've landed in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
If some of those airstrips in national parks now are like almost like an airport.
A lot of vehicles lined up,
Yeah.
meeting people.
I was also just going to add, Karin, that I think, one of our USPs, and it's taken a while to get to this point, is that it is an owner-run, family-owned
Totally
space, home, camp, home. I mean, it's our home, it's our staff's home, and we very much all work towards allowing our guests to feel that same way. And so, and for a long time, we both, whenever anybody said, oh, tell us about you, we would always say, no, the story's not about us, it's about the Samburus. And actually, I had a guest quite recently who, they were so fascinated with the three of us, and they kept asking questions, and I kept saying, no, it's, enough about us. And she said, you that's where you've got it so wrong. She said, you have got to understand how important you are to this story, because the book would not have started being written if it wasn't for you. You are the authors of this story, and you've got to be proud of that, and you've got to own that, so to speak. And so I have definitely come full circle in that it is very cool for people to come here and to have these amazing experiences with these incredible people, to be guided by our Samburu guides, and to be really immersed into a true cultural opportunity, but then to be able to sit around a table and to process it through our eyes and through our vision, and really understand how the story began, and ultimately where we hope the story is going to end. And I think there's enormous value in that, and I don't think there's a lot of places left where you can actually have that one-on-one experience.
I think that is the key, because like Rob said, you two are the bridge, and without you, we'd just be sort of throwing people in the water and expecting them to sort of figure it out. You help people. You probably go between being guides, hosts, psychologists. You talked about empathy and understanding people's issues, claustrophobia, and like, how do I deal with being a vegan but still seeing all of this, but to be able to come back and have dinner and talk to you, it is rare. We have very few places. Kenya is one of the few that has a few more owner operated lodges. One last thing that I didn't get to, and it is a key theme is just the whole idea of human wildlife conflict, and you touched on it in the beginning.
There's definitely human wildlife conflict. I think it is an issue, and I think it's kind of been, as the pendulum swung from poaching being the big issue for elephants in particular. It has swung to being human wildlife conflict, because now all of a sudden you've got pretty successful elephant conservation. Elephant numbers are higher than they've ever been. Sorry, he's been kind of skulking in the background.
I understand.
Yeah, you've got a situation where elephant numbers are some of the highest they've been in a long time, and human population is also burgeoning. So there is definitely human wildlife conflict on a pretty regular basis, and quite often it's just it's not life-threatening for either the wildlife or the humans. It's just that they can be a hindrance. They can be a menace around waterholes in particular, particularly in these dry parts of the country. A lot of elephants need those water points that people are using for their livestock, and that's where you get conflict. And I think that a few things are happening at the same time, which is exciting. Number one is we are bringing guests who generally love wildlife, and the biggest reason for them to come to Africa was, and always is, and always will be, wildlife. Storm and I are conservationists, and we set out on this journey as conservationists. And so is the Northern Rangelands Trust. So they have multiple bodies who are kind of influencing their opinion of animals such as elephants. Like I said earlier, Samburus do have quite a reverence for wildlife, and I think that's always been a good thing. But I think when elephants do get a little bit boisterous around waterholes, they often do find themselves in trouble. And as I said, the warriors don't mind throwing a spear at them when they do that. But we're also working on quite a cool project at the moment, which we're doing in collaboration with Northern Rangelands Trust and us and the community, where we have launched a warrior guardian program. And this is not a new kind of concept. It's been done in other parts of Africa sometimes using ladies, sometimes using just members of the community, but to try and create a guardian membership of people from the community who basically become ambassadors for a certain wildlife species. We're using warriors in our area because I think it's very important for us to engage the youth. Like I said earlier, all of our agreements with the community came through meetings with the elders. And I think that the youth are obviously an instrumental part of the future. And I think we also kind of realized that they felt a little sidelined in a lot of the negotiations, as I think that's probably a global problem where the youth kind of feel like they need a little more consideration, and we think we're seeing it everywhere.
Okay.
But we launched this program where we've got 10 warriors who basically are collecting data on elephants in the valley, and they are, number one, just creating a database which can be fed back to Save the Elephants, which is also one of the partner organizations who we're working with. And while doing that, they can also feed information back to the community about, a breeding herd that's, feeding in a certain area near a well or whatever, like, so that communities can actually use that information and say, okay, well, let's not go and herd our goats up there today because the breeding herd is down there, or an elephant bull that's in must, and they can be avoided.
Yeah.
And then another pretty cool element to this project is that we generate conservancy revenue through guests that stay at our camp, and it's quite high. We purposefully set our conservancy fee pretty high. It's $150 per guest per night.
Yeah.
For adults, and $75 per child per night. So we generate a fair amount of revenue for the community, and 5% of that revenue is put into a separate bank account they've called it the Livestock Consolation Fund. And basically it's a little pot of money that can be used in case of a conflict issue which goes bad. So
right.
Say now we've had quite a few cattle killed by elephants, strangely enough. So elephants lose their tempers at a waterhole,
or lions,
and they'll just kill
livestock.
Lions and elephants. Yeah.
But then at least we can actually compensate that person for their cow that they lost.
Ultimately, we're creating a safe space whereby the wildlife can bounce back.
Yeah.
Once you start, having a situation where your plains game, your lesser kudu, your prey species is allowed to come back and bounce back, because it's all here. It just needs the opportunity to multiply. Once that bounces back, naturally the predators will bounce back and will increase. And once you have more predators, the likelihood of human wildlife conflict is going to increase. So we're seeing there's two sides to the coin.
Kind of win-win for the community is employment. So they love the fact that 10 warriors have been employed to build this database of elephants. They all know the elephants already, and they're living side by side with them. Now they we've loaded them up with cameras and
Mm.
camera traps and field books and things like that, and they kind of getting a database going on elephants with torn ears and broken tusks, and they're starting to name them the same way as Save the Elephants did in Samburu very successfully. So we're not reinventing the wheel at all. This is all stuff that's being done here, and it's creating employment. And I think the employment is the first tangible element, because at the end of the day, they're people from within the community, and they're all going home at night and saying, "Hey, you know, we just spent a whole day with this breeding herd, and you know, we lived to tell the tale. They didn't try and kill us, and they were actually pretty cool. And you must see the new calf; it's the cutest thing, and you know, and the story builds."
And do guests get to see that project?
Absolutely.
If they
So
want
actually, the couple that we had, it was one of the things they did this morning. They went and met the elephant conservation team, the elephant guardians.
Amazing.
There's quite a lot to do here. You know, just in terms of culture, Karin.
A lot of the experiences mutate seasonally. So Samburus have a wonderful tradition of collecting water for their livestock at wells in the dry seasons, and when it is dry, guests can experience this incredible watering of livestock at the wells. They're affectionately dubbed the singing wells, and that's something guests can go and experience, and it's something that's pretty unique to the Samburu people and northern Kenya.
What's the time of year that you can do that?
Well, it should coincide with our peak season, which is June, July, August, September, all the way through to October.
Okay.
Then we expect rains in late October, and October, November, December is usually too green for that. But then you know, the other experiences that guests can experience, and we like to keep the cultural experiences very fluid. You know, so sometimes there's a house being built in a village, and we go and just like check in and see how the house construction is going, and you can go and, you know, see how women make bits of rope out of bark and stuff like that. You know, it's a very organic experience. We have some blacksmiths in the area that we go and visit, and you can actually go and see them making Samburu spears and knives and daggers and things like that, which is really fun. And see how they forge their metal and make their wares. And then we also have all of our little conservation projects, which guests can also be part of. You know, going and joining the elephant guardians and understanding the project that they're working on, and heading out and actually trying to track an elephant bull that they know is in an area, and see how they document identification markers on that elephant to build a database. And we also are running a women's agave project, where we have planted agave around villages to try and stabilize degraded land and to act as a fodder crop in droughts. So guests can go and be part of that and see how the women are planting it and propagating it.
Do they use agave for like as a cream or a salve as well?
The outer leaves can be chopped up and fed to cattle in a drought.
Oh, okay.
That's how it's used. But we're kind of thinking of ways in which we can, you know, maybe add some value add products, like, as you say, creams are one thing that's been done in some parts of the world. Agave syrup is an obvious one too. Yeah. Maybe even Kalepo tequila one day.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Storm ran a dog vaccination program where we vaccinated domestic dogs, because obviously, you know, Samburu people have domestic dogs. We vaccinated domestic dogs against rabies and canine distemper, which ultimately benefits the wildlife. But this really resonated with a guest who loved dogs and loved wildlife, and said, "Hey, you know what? I want to help you support that." Yeah. And they helped us to you know, fund the vaccination of 150 dogs.
And you know, at the end of the day, it's, you know, we have come into a space with the people who had nothing, and both parties have had to sacrifice things to make it work. But at the end of the day, you know, what we're doing, I suppose, is allowing us one step closer to securing 460,000 acres of wilderness. And by having a bum in a bed, that is us getting that little bit closer to achieving that. And so, you can also just come here and enjoy it for what it is and choose not to do anything, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
It's got so much potential here, and I think that is what people love about it, is that it's so massive. I think what is remarkable about what we have achieved here in a relatively short space of time is, 2 years ago when we put in our dedicated water hole, which is exclusively for the wildlife of the area. When we built it and when the elephants started coming to the water hole, what initially happened with our staff members is the moment they saw an elephant, they would pick up a stone or a rock and they would throw it at the elephant, because that's the way they have lived alongside these animals for centuries, and so natural that they would pick up a rock to scare it away. Within, I can confidently say, 9 to 10 months, as opposed to picking up a rock and throwing it at the elephant, they were picking up their cell phones and taking a photograph of those elephants and sending it to us while they were watching the elephants. And in 10 months...
Or actually, it was even cooler. You'd see them taking selfies of themselves with elephants in the background.
Absolutely.
It was really pretty amazing.
10 months to achieve something like that is remarkable. And in 2 years, the change has been extraordinary. Ultimately, what we're doing here with Kalepo is conserving a landscape for the future. And it's a saying that I use often, and a saying I feel extraordinarily passionate about, is that people come to Africa for the wildlife. People come back to Africa for the people. And that is what we have created here. That is what I feel very proud of that we have done. And so if you find yourself in a situation where you have clients who are wanting to do something different, if you find yourself with clients who are wanting to do something sexy, and if you have got clients who are wanting to do something extraordinary, pick us.
Well, that's our show for today. Subscribe on YouTube and follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Till next time, I'm Karin Jones.